I have a question that I want you to think about before you answer it. Don't just answer, just think about it first and then answer it so that you can answer it honestly, all right? And the question is, can you name, since being on earth, can you name one time that you have done something for someone, anyone, and it wasn't ego-driven? You didn't get any ego feeling from it at all. It was the honest way of doing things. Have you ever, at one time in your life, done anything where there wasn't an ego motivation behind it at all? Not one iota. Have you ever thought about that before? This question, anybody? Okay. I want you to think about that for a minute, and I'll get back to you on it. And the reason I ask that, because I'm looking at what's happening around me, in the world around me, and at myself as well. And I'm looking at the political world, and I notice now that politics is about self-interest nowadays. Every group has an agenda, and it's about what they want for their group. It's not about what is good for the country. You know, one of the Kennedy guys, Robert Kennedy said, think not what your country can do for you? Was it Robert or Ted? John? John? Oh, okay. He said, think not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's out the window now. Every group seems to have its own agenda, and it has nothing, it's not good for the country, and in most cases it has nothing to do with the country. All right? For an example, the abortion issue. The abortion issue is a very selfish issue. It's all about the individual, not about the child. Just think about that. It's about a woman deciding that she doesn't want to be bothered with a child. It gets in the way of her going to work. It gets in the way of her having to raise it, feed it, guide it. It gets in the way of having to date or whatever they're doing. And so what they do, because it's ego-driven, they will kill that child in the womb and excuse it away, saying, it's my body, it's my choice, God wanted it that way. And I don't know if you can get in it. Well, you can. That is selfishness to the core. Just think about it. And the ego allows them to make up an excuse that causes them to feel good about what they're doing. It won't let them see what they're doing. And they go so far as to pass laws that would allow them to do it. It's not about the child at all. Can you imagine killing your own child in your own body? It's total ego. And the abortion issue is all selfish, all about that. It's all evil. Now, if a woman's life is on the line, it's a different story. The woman should have the first choice to live, since she's already living, if that's possible. But it's all about, and speaking of that, I heard this story yesterday from this grandmother who said that her daughter were having a child, and at childbirth, the mother died, and the daughter survived. And the little girl is about 4 years old now. And she said that her daughter is always, the granddaughter is always talking to the mother now. She talks to her mother all the time. And the grandmother said, she says, who are you talking to? She's like, I'm talking to my mom, my mother. She's like, I don't see anyone. She said, and the little girl said, well, it's because my mother's in the spirit now. You can't see her, but I see her. How many people believe that's possible? Would that scare you, though? No? Maybe if I was 4, it wouldn't scare me. Can you imagine Mama popping up right now? And so I asked the grandmother, did she believe it? Was she scared about it? She said she believed it, and it does make her a little nervous. Because she believes it, and yet she doesn't believe it, because as we get older, we're told that spirits are bad things, is a bad thing and that we should be afraid of it. You get older, you lose consciousness, you become afraid of things that you're not afraid of as kids. But anyway, abortion is selfish to the core. You're killing a life so you can live your selfish ego life. It's just mind-blowing to me. Another thing is the same-sex marriage thing. Total, absolutely ego-driven and very selfish. Because what it does is it deliberately destroys the order of the family. It restructures the family. It changes the family of God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, the woman over the children. That's the perfect order. But these people are so selfish and ego-driven and wicked that they are passing laws to change that. And in return, the next generation will suffer for it. Because the more you give into that, the more that order is going to be broken, and the kids are going to suffer for it. Because unless you have that order, you suffer in life, period. The next one is the black movement, black folks. Not all, but most. They want affirmative action. They want, they don't want voter laws, which require you to have an ID in order to go and vote. They say, oh, no, you're trying to stop blacks from voting. And they lie and say that, people want to stop them. It's not true. Common sense says we need order. We need order. We want I think voting is one of the most important things you can do in life. And so we need some kind of structure there to make sure that the crooks don't get in and mess it up, because if you vote in the wrong people, we all suffer for it. But they say, oh, no, this is the laws. They don't want blacks to vote. And blacks are saying, that's right, we shouldn't have an ID. And we shouldn't have to have an ID. And I'm thinking, how can you feel that way? You have to have an ID to go to the toilet nowadays. Have you noticed that? No. But how did we get so selfish like that? Where did that come from, that you have a group of people who are unwilling to do it the right way? They fight, they go to court, they call names, they fight against doing it the right way. And I remember growing up, black people did it the right way for the most part. They loved what was right, they did what was right to the best of their ability. And now you have this black agenda that is totally ego-driven and all wrong. And it's just out there. And it's not being discussed in that manner at all. People don't discuss the ego. They just say, well, the whites are against the blacks, the Republicans are against the Democrats, and those so mean Republicans don't want us to vote. And it's not about what's best for the country, what's best for America. Is it best that we have IDs in order to vote? Because we have illegal aliens, we have all kinds of folks here now. Is it best that we have IDs to make sure that everybody is a citizen of this great nation? They don't talk about that. They don't talk about what's best. Another thing, liberal women created a shameless society. The women's movement have caused so much destruction in the family, in our country, with different laws, and their laws are totally against men. I can't think of one liberal law that's been passed and I tried to, that's been passed in the last 50 years that enhanced the life of the man and of the family. I can't think of one. And yet, their agenda is in the forefront of our lives all the time. This is evil. Our battle is a spiritual battle between good and evil, right versus wrong. It really is. I was looking at a program this morning as I was getting dressed. In this program, they take black boys off to a camp somewhere. Steve Harvey and all those guys involved in it. And they show the black guys how to, work out, exercise, and they try to help them get their life together. But the one thing that they do, that they may be successful in helping them get careers going and kind of moving forward, which is not a bad thing at all. I like that part of it. But the one thing they do, there's a point when they get with the mothers, because most of these women, these kids are single mothers. So they get at a point where they bring the kids together with the mothers, and guess who the bad guy is? the dad. So they're not encouraging these boys to love their fathers and mothers. They're encouraging them to hate their fathers and love mama. At the end of the program, they even, well, the one I saw, I don't know if they do it all the time, they even bring the boys and the mamas back together, and they have the boys say, I love you, mama. You're the best, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wow. And so they're hating their fathers, not realizing that as long as they hate their fathers, they're never going to find peace. They can make money, and that's not a bad thing. These guys need to learn how to work. They need to learn how to be independent. But as long as they hate their fathers, they're not going to, and they don't have the mothers, during the little counseling session, I haven't seen it, because this is my first time watching the program. Not one mother said what she did wrong. Not one. It was all that bad father, and I'm sorry, son, I allowed you to go through that. You're a bad father. But the mother did not admit it. Like the father had nothing better to do but wake up in the morning and say, you know what, let me just beat my wife today before what? Oh, where my mic? Oh, thank you, Dad. Like the father had nothing better to do than just to get up, you know, before I go to work, let me just beat my wife. For no reason. Beating is not good. I'm not encouraging that. And when he gets home at night, just right after dinner before going to bed, let me beat her again. And so it's ego-driven. And ego is evil, and we got to do something about it. And so that's why what made me look at myself, and also it made me think, let me ask the folks today here in the building and also out there in TV land, have you ever done anything in your life since being on earth that wasn't ego-driven at all? There was no ego in it at all. It's so important to think about these things. I'm telling you. And I'll tell you why in a minute. God wants us to think on these things, to pay attention to what's really, really going on, because what's happening out here is not as important as to what's happening in here, within here. I'm telling you, folks. And I'm a dummy. I'm not the brightest light on the block. But I know for a fact that the situation is not the issue. It's what's happening here during the situation. It really, really, really is. And when you can see it, it frees you up. It looks like all is well. It feels like everything is that. It feels better than $1 million would feel, or anything. It is mind-blowing how that is. So sometimes I see these things, and I feel so free, like I've discovered something that was holding me down and I didn't know it, and I'm free. And I'm like, wow, I feel like everything is fine now, just seeing these little things, what seem like little things. It's so serious that you pay attention to yourself. Like we can go through our whole life thinking we're doing good stuff for people with the right motivation. And I wouldn't want to drop my body and then God say, oh, you know what? Yeah, look at all your wrong motivations, ego gratification you got. That's why I want to know now why I live instead of finding out later. You know, you drop your body, now you're going into the light, and you're seeing all these things you should have done and how you really were, and then the darkness comes. That would be awful. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but because we don't know. But we got a chance right now to know. And I want to know now why I have a chance, why I live. I want to know now. And so these things are so important. Have you noticed that when you do something that nobody see you doing it, the ego want you to tell somebody? And you be like, well, I'm going to keep this one to myself. And they've been trying to make you talk. As soon as you get around one person, it try to make you tell it. And you be like, no, I'm not going to tell it. And then it makes you, it just keeps talking to you until you finally tell it. I had that experience yesterday. Yesterday was Saturday, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you about it real fast. Don't forget your thought. I went to the store to pick up an item. And so I got to the window there, and I can just kind of see that this lady was suffering inwardly. So I said to her, and I met her before, but it's been a long time, right? And I said, I noticed you haven't forgiven your mother yet. And I said that because you haven't forgiven your mother, You're just not free. I told you to forgive her. And she's like, wow, you remember me? She said, I remember you telling me that a while back, some months ago, right? And she said, but I forgave her, and but I just don't be around her. I just don't be around her. I forgave her. And I said, but it's more than just not being around her. You need to forgive her so that you can go free. And she said, like, I don't look like I'm free? And I said, no. And then I said that, because when she speaks, her voice is like really soft and timid. I said that one example of you not being free is that I noticed when you speak to the customers, you're like, how you doing? That's not your voice, Michelle. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about a white woman. How you doing? Thank you. Doesn't it sound like Michelle? And I was not thinking of Michelle. I was not thinking of you, Michelle. How you doing? You know, I said that the reason you're speaking to the customers in that way, because you're afraid that if you had a voice of authority, if you spoke with authority, that they're going to yell at you and you can't deal with it. And that woman broke down and started crying. She just boo-hoo. And we had a line of people, you know, and everything. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, and she was like, she couldn't even see the cash register. She was like, I said, you know what? We'll talk about this later. We'll just talk, because, you know. And she was like, wow. She said that when you first spoke to me, some months ago, she said, I've been thinking about that ever since. She said, I even dreamed about you telling me this. And I'm surprised that you remembered me. And so I said, well, just, you know, you got to forgive. And when I got released, she said, oh, I put my email address in the bag because she wanted to keep the conversation going. So I said to myself, I'm not going to tell anyone this story. I'm going to keep this one private. And my ego wanted me to tell it, right? And I could hear my ego talking to me to tell it. And so I went and met Frankie for lunch. And then the ego started talking to me again. Tell it. Just tell Frankie. You guys talking deep talk anyway, right? And I felt myself telling him. And I'm like, oh, that was stupid. I shouldn't have told him. So I recognized it. But isn't that like nice story of the ego making you tell it? It won't let you not tell it until you become really, really aware of what's going on. But that's my ego story. Yes, Pat? Well, it wasn't gossip. It's to get a feeling from it. I really want you to understand it. It wasn't gossip. It wouldn't let me just let that be between me and her and the Lord. You know what I'm saying? And it seemed like, I don't know if it's important or not, but it's these things we got to watch. It wasn't gossip at all. It wasn't put the woman down and all that kind of stuff. You don't need any outer source to keep you going. Matter of fact, because eventually that outer source situation will change on you. It's not going to always be the same, but the love of God is always the same. It never changes. And that's why he wants us to have that relationship with him. And he is the only one that should be giving us life. Because it will change. There's things in the world today are here today and gone tomorrow. Family members are here today and gone tomorrow. Friendship, here today, gone tomorrow. It's constantly changing. And once it's gone, then that light is going out and your energy is gone. I want you to see this because I want you to allow God to reveal it to you. It's not enough that we're just talking about it. The reason we'll use the words to talk about it because my desire is that you start to focus on yourself from within. And then once you start looking at self, God will reveal this to you. And once he reveals it to you, you're free. Because we can talk about it and you can start watching yourself, it's not going to free you up. It must be revealed to you. Because we can't even see the depths of our ego until it is revealed to us. And that's the truth. It must be revealed. I noticed this about myself the other day. I'm driving and I'm getting on the freeway and this person tried to jump in front of me to get on the freeway. And so I let them in. And then they waved at me, saying, thank you. And I waved back, and I felt that feeling. I'm like, wow. I said, I would never wave at anybody else. I felt that feeling when I waved back because I let them in and they acknowledged it. And then my mind tried to tell me, oh, Jesse, that was fine because if you had not waved back, you would have been rude. You know, it's trying to help me cover it up. Isn't that amazing? Uh-huh. And I don't know. I don't know if you can weigh you back without the feeling.
You can, not me, you.
Can I?
Yeah.
I don't know. I had to wait until next time. But let me tell you, I remember when I was a kid, and I used to work in the cotton field, and I was very close to my grandmother, really close to my grandmother. And in the cotton fields, we would stop around noon to have lunch. And then I remember one time as a kid offering my grandmother my lunch, right? And I would always kind of do stuff for her. And some of the other women in the field heard me say, "Oh, Mama, you want my lunch, right?" And they're like, "Roly," her name was Rosa Lee Thomas. "Roly, that's a good boy you got. That's a good grandboy." I remember feeling high from that. And I think that's where my stuff started at. I was thinking about this yesterday. And I may have started before that, but that's all I can see right now. But I think it started right there. And so I've been trying to think, in the last 24 years since starting Bond, have I done anything for anybody where I didn't feel some sense of ego gratification? And I started thinking about this yesterday. So far, I haven't come up with anything. Looked like everything I've done, I had a good feeling about it, but I would say, "Oh, I feel happy that they can see." Or I feel, you feel good about it. And I didn't realize that undercurrent ego is still there working. And like the big stuff we see all the time, but just all little stuff just kind of that we don't see is what's working us as well. We gotta see our whole motivation. And unless you start paying attention to yourself, you're not gonna see it, and it's gonna keep you from God. It's gonna hold you back. So look at those things. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for coming. I appreciate it, folks.